Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
And as always, let there be football. Welcome into Move the Chains. I'm your host, Jonathan Bam Rivers. And we got wall-to-wall NFL action on the show today. Now, when it comes to roster construction in the NFL, money talks. And general managers will tell you how they feel about their team and what it is that they prioritize. And I'll take a deep dive into that subject. And as always, we're going to dive into your questions via social media. I want your voices to be heard because I want you to know exactly what I feel about the topics that you're discussing. And also, have you ever heard anybody say that this team or this player has nothing to lose? It is a narrative, but it is nonsense. So you know I'm going to speak my mind on that. And lastly, I want to make sure that everybody knows that home field advantage may not be the biggest component in a team's success when it comes to the playoffs. All that and more right here on Move the Chains, but you know how we do it. So let's kick it off with First Down. So you know when I was growing up, my mother would watch all of these detective shows and these cop shows, whether it was In the Heat of the Night or Matlock or Perry Mason, Murder, She Wrote. I grew up watching those because she watched them. And there was no time where in that show I wouldn't ever hear my mother say, hey, you just got to follow the money. And I really didn't know what that meant when I was young, but as I got older, I understood that following the money meant that the assailant generally had some type of paper trail. So if you were able to follow the money, you were able to see the genesis of what situations were occurring. And it's the same thing when it comes to the NFL now, guys. Money talks. And before we even get to the money portion of it, I want you to understand that money talks because the game has changed. Do you remember back in the day, there used to be a question that people would have about certain quarterbacks or certain offensive skilled players or even defenders, and they would say, how will their game translate to the NFL? Because in their minds, the NFL was so different from college football because in college, they'd run these spread offenses and they do all these things that people were so innovative with that the NFL really didn't understand and really didn't think would translate well because they were still ground and pound running the football 30 to 35 times a game. But I want to tell you that now the NFL has become what college football has been for the last 20 or 30 years. It's a spread offense, read option type deal. And if you understand what general managers now think, they'll tell you what they prioritize when it comes to roster construction. Because I've told you for a long time what positions I felt like were the most important in the NFL, and you can see by these shots of guys like Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown, the receiver position has really taken on a life of its own when it comes to what teams feel. Because think about it. What did Josh Allen look like before he got Stephon Diggs and after he got Stephon Diggs? What did Jalen Hurts look like before he had A.J. Brown and after he got A.J. Brown? It's also why the Houston Texans went in and got Stephon Diggs to bring to the table for their young quarterback in C.J. Stroud. And I want to show you guys this graphic when it comes to average annual salaries by positions in the NFL. Now, we all know that the quarterback position is the highest paid position in the NFL, and it should be, at an annual salary average of $40 million a year. But look at the wide receiver, $23 million a year. Now, we know that Justin Jefferson just signed not only the richest contract in wide receiver history, but the richest non-quarterback contract in the history of the NFL. And it's telling you that the Minnesota Vikings not only value Justin Jefferson, but they value the position. Now, I'm not saying this. You don't go out and pay a wide receiver or an edge rusher $30 million a year simply because of that position. But when you have game breakers, general managers are telling you everything revolves around the quarterback. Look at it. Wide receiver, edge rusher, and offensive lineman. After the quarterback, those are the three highest paid positions based on average annual salary. A wide receiver, quarterback's number one target. An edge rusher, the quarterback's number one deterrent. And an offensive lineman, the quarterback's number one protector. Everything is predicated around the quarterback. So if you're a general manager and you feel as if you have a quarterback that can do what he needs to do, that is a franchise quarterback, that may be transcendent, in general managers' minds, they need to go find them a wide receiver. And if you're a defensive coordinator or a GM, you say, we got to find somebody to get after the quarterback. That's why, especially when it comes to edge rusher, it's not even necessarily a defensive end or an outside linebacker. If you have somebody with the skill set that can go get the football like a Josh Allen for the Jaguars or a Nick Bosa for the 49ers, those are the type of people that you want on your team. And I've always thought, like I told you guys on this show, an offensive lineman is the most important position outside of the quarterback. And I always bring up guys like Andrew Luck. I always bring up guys like Joe Burrow. I also bring up guys like David Carr, who used to play for the Texans back in their inception. He was knocked out of the league because he had no protection. So if you're an offensive lineman, you're going to get paid. But at this point, general managers are telling you that you're not going to get paid more than an edge rusher and you're not going to get paid more than a wide receiver. And if you look down towards this list, now, I want to look at the running back spot because everybody talks about the devaluing of the running back spot. We know Christian McCaffrey just got an extension for the 49ers. He's making about $20 million a year. Saquon Barkley is making about $12 or $13 million a year. Now, that's not money that you should scoff at. That's a lot of money. But when it comes to the position relevant to what running backs were looked at last 20 years or what have you, it has changed completely. And even in today's NFL, you look at running backs in college, what do you usually see? Teams with 3 or 4 running backs, which is great for the running backs now because even though they're not getting paid what they once were, the longevity is increasing because they're not having to tote the ball the amount of times that they had to tote it 15 or 20 years ago. So this is what I want people to understand. If you follow the money, because the money is talking, you will understand what general managers think about how they're constructing their roster and what they're prioritizing when it comes to trying to build a Super Bowl contender. All right, that's it for First Down. When we come back for the break, we're going to take your questions via social media. We'll be back with more Move the Chains right after this. And welcome back into the show. And before we get into your social media questions, as always, I want to take the time to thank everybody that's watching Move the Chains. The feedback is phenomenal. I love the questions that you're asking me when I'm not even on the show. People see me in the street or in the store, and they have questions about football because they've seen the show. That's the kind of participation that I appreciate and that we appreciate. And as always, I can't do anything without the team behind the scenes, and that's the production team, one of the best in the business. They make sure everything works. All I do is talk, but they make sure all the inner workings and the outer mechanisms are where they should be. So shout out to my production team. But you know what time it is. Your social media questions, let's run it. It's time for Second Down. All right, let's get right to it. Let's see what we have first. Patrick J. asks, is it smart for players to miss mandatory minicamp? Well, Patrick, the answer is it's smart if they understand their leverage and if they can take advantage of their leverage. CeeDee Lamb is one of the best wide receivers in football, plays for the Dallas Cowboys, hasn't reported to mandatory camp yet. Same thing with Brandon Ayuk of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, of course, the reason they're not attending mandatory camp is because they want long-term deals. Remember, this is an inherently violent game when it comes to football, and the best thing you can do as a football player is try to make sure that you have guaranteed money for at least 3 to 5 years. Because remember, the second contract that you have in the NFL can be one of your richest contracts when you get off of that rookie deal. So it's smart if they have leverage. And the reason I say that is because when you don't come to mandatory minicamp, you get fined. Now it's about $17,000 for the first day, add $34,000 or so the second day, and the third day can be over $50,000. So you're looking at a 6-figure fine if you don't come to minicamp at all. But these players are willing to risk 6 figures in order for them to break the bank and make $30, $40 million a year, and I can understand that. They want to get paid. They're going out onto the field every year, and they're putting their bodies on the line, and they have value. So this is just a negotiation part of the NFL. So I think it's smart, once again, like I said, if they understand their leverage. All right, let's go to the next question. Should the 49ers trade Deebo Samuel? Question asked by Victor R. Now, Josiah, one of the producers, asked me, I'm really interested in hearing your take on this. So I'll give you a 2-part answer. Because if the 49ers want to trade Deebo Samuel from a production standpoint, they absolutely should not. He's not one of the best wide receivers in football. He's one of the best players in football. His versatility is second to none. And in my opinion, that includes Christian McCaffrey. However, if you're asking me, should they trade Deebo Samuel because of the salary cap? Or should they trade Deebo Samuel because they have so many other weapons that they can go ahead and let go of Deebo Samuel? But also listen to this. Should they trade Deebo Samuel because he's so valuable? In addition to the weapons that they already have, they can get multiple draft picks for Deebo Samuel and not only use those draft picks to possibly draft people in the next couple of years, they can use those draft picks that they get from trading Deebo Samuel to acquire talent that's already in the NFL to try to bolster this roster to get a player like they got in the Christian McCaffrey. Those are all of the things that Deebo Samuel brings to the table. So if you're asking me, should they trade him from a production standpoint? Absolutely not. But should they trade him because they can get assets back for them and make them even better, even in his absence? I can definitely understand that. All right, what's the next question that we have? Fred G wants to know, why do some people think Tua Tagovailoa isn't a franchise quarterback? I'm going to give it to you simple, man. I think it's because of injuries. Because if you watch Tua Tagovailoa play quarterback at the University of Alabama, he is a phenomenal quarterback. His anticipation, his accuracy, And now, if you've seen Tua coming into the 2024 minicamps in the OTAs for the Dolphins, he's even a more slender quarterback. And in my opinion, one of the biggest hindrances that Tua had was his lack of mobility. I mean, he could move in the pocket, and that's what I want to focus on as well right quick. When I say lack of mobility, it doesn't mean that you can't run like a Lamar Jackson or like a C.J. Stroud or like an Aaron Rodgers in his prime or a Josh Allen now. Mobility means that you can be mobile outside of the pocket and inside of the pocket. And I think Tua's mobility inside of the pocket has been pretty good, but now I think it'll even be better. So people question his ability because they say, well, his arm may not be strong enough, or I'm worried about his durability. I just think that people will always compare Tua Tagovailoa to Justin Herbert because they were taken in the same draft back-to-back. And I will remind everybody that Tua Tagovailoa has a way better record as a starting quarterback than Justin Herbert does. I think Justin Herbert is definitely a franchise quarterback, but in my opinion, Tua Tagovailoa is also a franchise quarterback. So a lot of the doubt comes from people not thinking he can stay healthy. And now last year, what did he show you? He can stay healthy. He was also one of the top 2 or 3 MVP candidates until second half of the season came about. He does have to be better. He can take it to the next level, but I think he is a franchise quarterback in my estimation. All right, that's up for your social media questions. When we come back for the break, you know what time it is. My favorite segment of the show, Nonsense Narrative. Back when we'll move the chains right after this. And we'll go back in to Move the Chains. And at this time in the show, I always get an opportunity to break down and hopefully break up thinking that some people have. There are nonsense narratives that are created all across the country. And I listen to a lot of them. I'm going to let you know because as a host, my job is to also continue to build my craft. So I watch a lot of TV shows, listen to a lot of radio, and I hear a lot of what people say, and a lot of it doesn't make sense to me. And this is why this was created. Let's go ahead and run with it. It's time for Nonsense Narratives. I'm about to say something that I know you heard. And don't get mad at me because you probably said it yourself at some point in time. Players or teams don't have anything to lose. They're ahead of schedule. They're 2 years ahead of schedule. Nobody expected them to be here. They have nothing to lose when it comes to a game or an award or what have you. And I'll tell you this. This might be one of the most asinine and ridiculous statements that I've ever heard. Because what this does is this creates an assumption that player or team will be right back at the spot in which they're in presently in the future. And there's nothing you can do to guarantee the future. Because I'll tell you this, if a team wins the Super Bowl and they come back with the exact same roster, I mean, no trades, no draft picks, nothing changes, no coaching changes, what have you, I promise you that team is still not the same team that they were the year before. Because when things happen, mindsets change. Life happens. So to say that a team or a player has nothing to lose is just bad form. That's what it is. Because what I can't do is sit here and tell you that a team in this moment is not its best version of itself than it will be 2 years from now. When you have an opportunity to win a Super Bowl, when you have an opportunity to win a conference championship game, when you're in that position, it is now your best shot because it is now your most present shot. It is your reality in that moment. And you know what Bella illustrates what I'm talking about? You know what Bella depicts the point that I'm trying to make? We've got a graphic that I want to show you. And remember, this is not just about teams, it's about players as well. I want you to look at the title. Quarterbacks to lose a Super Bowl and never get back. And I want you to look at this list. And we went all the way back to Super Bowl 38. And it's so amazing. If you look at the last 3 players on this list, Jared Goff, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Joe Burrow, we have these players highlighted because these players are still active. And I always talk about Joe Burrow because Joe Burrow has famously said, our championship window is open as long as I'm playing. I love the moxie. I love the swag. I love the confidence. That's one of the reasons that I really love Joe Burrow as a quarterback, even though I think sometimes his accomplishments on the field don't necessarily warrant the inflation of respect that he gets. Not saying he's not phenomenal. I'm just saying there have been times in the playoffs where he hasn't been great and his team has picked him up, but that's what teams do. And I understand quarterbacks get unfair and fair share of the credit and the blame. So that's the life that we live in. But look at these quarterbacks. Super Bowl 38, Jake Delhomme and the Panthers lost to the Patriots Where have the Panthers been, guys? Until Cam Newton in 2015, the Panthers were terrible. And post-Cam Newton, the Panthers have been terrible. And that's what I want to focus on as well when you look at guys like Cam Newton and Matt Ryan. Now, these are the only two quarterbacks on this list that were able to win MVPs and get their teams to the Super Bowl, and they both lost. And even in the Falcons case, and for all you Falcons fans, I know you think I'm taking a shot at you. I promise you, I am not. I'm simply spitting facts. You were up in Super Bowl 51, 28-3. And I want you to look at the Falcons' record the last 4 years. 6-win, 7-win team. So how dare you come to me and you sit here and say, well, you know what? They're a year or two ahead of schedule. They don't have anything to lose. What are you talking about? They're in the game. So they have the game to lose, first of all. And second of all, you never know. They can lose their quarterback the very next year. I keep telling you, 25% of the NFL did not have their starting quarterbacks last year. And of the 8 teams that lost their starting quarterback due to significant injury, only one of them made the playoffs. And the Browns, that was that one team, got bounced in the first round. So if you're in position to win a championship, or if you're in position to win a conference championship to get to a Super Bowl, you got to get it done. You have to get it done because there's no guarantee that you'll be there moving forward. All right, I was pretty tame for that nonsense narrative, right? Hey, make sure we come back right after the break. It'll be the final drive right here on Move the Chains. We'll be right back after this. And welcome back into the show, and we've reached the end of the show. So this is the last segment, so you know what time it is. It's time for the final drive. When it comes to the NFL, and this could be during the regular season, this could come to playoff time, but this to come to football, in my opinion, in general, you can never discount what experience means. And I think experience is so important that I actually think it trumps home field advantage, especially when it comes to the playoffs. And I can point to a litany of teams, whether it's the Kansas City Chiefs or teams that have won, you know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went on the road and won 3 straight games before they played a home Super Bowl a few years ago. But because they had guys like Tom Brady and Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski who had been there. The Chiefs have guys like Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Experience matters because there's a separate and a different mindset that people have. I mean, it's something as technical as understanding how to control your breathing when you get into big situations. When you've done something before, you now have muscle memory. When you've done something before, you now have demonstrated confidence that can permeate, that you can bring out of you in certain situations. You know when you need to throw haymakers, and you know when you need to be somebody that can just take the game where it is. So that's why, in my estimation, experience trumps home field advantage. All right, don't forget, you don't only watch WXTX Fox 54, the sports leader for Move the Chains. You can also catch us on YouTube, and that's at @move_the_chains. Make sure you leave a comment, leave a question. Let us know what you think about the show because it is all appreciated. Hey, and as always, it's been a phenomenal show. I want to thank you for watching. To everybody in production, I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers, and until next time, on the next episode of Move the Chains, God bless.